Kathleen Kalb is the author of the Ella Shane mystery series set in Gilded Age, New York, and including a fatal finale and a fatal first night. She's also a weekend morning anchor at New York's 1010 Winds Radio, capping a career she began as a teenage DJ in rural Western Pennsylvania. Kathleen is a member of the Sisters in Crime New York chapter and the Authors Guild, and is active in media organizations as well. She lives in Cheshire, Connecticut with her family and is at work on her next book. Please visit her online at KathleenMarpleKalb.com. We'll send that link in the chat. And Erica Ruth Neubauer is the Agatha Award-winning author of the Jane Wunderly mysteries, as well as an Anthony Award and Lefty Award finalist. She spent 11 years in the military, nearly 2 as a Maryland police officer, and 1 as a high school English teacher before finding her way as a writer. She has been a reviewer of mysteries and crime fiction for publications such as Publishers Weekly and Mystery Scene magazine for several years, and she is a member of Sisters in Crime and Mystery Writers of America. Erica Ruth lives in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and you can visit her at ericaruthneubauer.com, which we will also send in the chat. And I'm now going to let them take things away.
Thanks so much. Great to be here. Why don't I start by asking you about the evolution of your character, because I think that's something that's very interesting as you go along through a series to have the characters evolve and how you get there in the first place.
Absolutely. So I think starting out, I definitely had kind of a story arc in mind for Jane. She is a widow of the First World War and is not sad about it. She has kind of a dark backstory, came from an abusive marriage, and is really hesitant to get involved with men, doesn't want to meet one. And so as the 3 books progress, she sort of maybe changes her mind about that, and what her thoughts and feelings about that are. And did you do the same thing? Did you start out with like an idea of a story arc for your
kind of, yeah. Ella is very committed to the single life as a profession. She's an opera singer and she plays male roles, and she is committed to the idea of herself as a respectable maiden lady and an artist. She certainly isn't interested in anything not dishonorable as she would see it. Right. And she's not interested in a marriage either. And so when she meets the Duke, he makes her kind of think a little bit about maybe she might want to have a man around, but it's not a will they or won't they, it's a how on earth can they? Because he's a British aristocrat and she's an Irish Jewish orphan who made good as a singer. And how's that going to work? And so they spend the 3 books pretty much fighting about that, sometimes with actual swords.
Well, that's fantastic.
The duels are there is actual swordplay. That's one of the things that is like the signature of Ella. She is a trained stage fencer, and that sounds like
so much fun to write. Where did you come up with that?
Well, I'm a girl doing a boy shift. It's a joke in radio. Men, there was once it was not originally, it was not a joke, that the women didn't sound authoritative enough to open an hour. It had to be the male voice saying, it is 5 o'clock and. Right. And so by the time I started working in New York, it was just a joke that one of my colleagues said to me, "Oh, you're doing the boy shift tonight," which made me think of trouser roles in opera. Yeah. And and that's kind of how we got there.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. But your character flies planes.
She does. In the second one, I have her learn how to fly a biplane, which I was in the Air Force for 11 years, but I did not fly planes. I did a lot of other things, but I did not fly planes. But when I was in college, I actually did take a couple of flying lessons. And it was quite frankly terrifying.
Yeah, I have a friend who's a pilot who was taking flying lessons, and there was no way I was going up with her.
No, right? I mean, those
I love her dearly, but I would not get in her plane.
No. I think the scariest thing that I did was I was like 18 years old, and like he had me. It was a little Cessna, and he had me like point the nose up and then stall it, and then start like floating backwards so you could figure out how to come out of a stall. And I was like, that was maybe the scary, especially up to that point, it was the scariest thing I'd ever done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, I have Jane learn how to fly biplanes because, the 20s was a great time for that.
Well, she's very much a woman of her time with the independence and the flying and all that. I mean, she's very, you really nailed it. She's right. She's exactly the sort of person you would want to hang out with at that time.
Yes. Yes. That's what I was shooting for. And have a cocktail. And have a cocktail with her.
Yes. Well, exactly. You would, Ella would probably serve you coffee. If you caught her at the right moment, it might be a medicinal sherry. And that's how she would describe it.
Fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
What drew you to the Gilded Age?
I'm sorry?
The Gilded Age.
I've always liked, I was a history major in college, and there's two periods that I was always interested in. One was the Tudor period, and sorry, everybody, but, and I majored in British Renaissance history, so I apologize forthwith for saying this. It's been done to death. There's someone out there who can do something new with the Tudor period. I am not that person.
Fair.
And when I was looking for a time period to write, that was not going to be it. And the other one that I've always been drawn to is the Victorian period, because it's recognizable, but it's still very different.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I think the time period you chose, the between the wars, is really fascinating because it's just the point where change starts happening so quickly and people are really the world is really moving.
Yeah, I mean, there's two reasons I chose, a couple of reasons why I chose it. One is that I thought it was a really interesting time for women. They were really pushing against the Victorian strictures and against I think they're joining the workforce. They were wearing their skirts short and going out drinking and dancing and joining the workforce. So things were starting to change for them, which I think was fun to play with. But also, I think the 20s are really evocative for readers. It immediately paints kind of a picture still of like flappers and cocktails and that whole thing. And the other reason is that my dad raised me on old black and white movies. And old Agatha Christie, and a lot of that was set during the 20s and 30s. And so I have very nostalgic feelings about that time period as well.
Yeah. I grew up reading those god-awful Regency romances.
Oh, I read a lot of those.
With the Wicked Duke and the Sweet Maiden and all this stuff. And so that's one thing I always like to play with, is that because the convention is that when the Wicked Duke decides he wishes to be reformed by the love of a good woman, the good woman says, "Oh, hell yes, I'm here.
Right.
Please, please let me adore you."
Yeah.
None of that. Ella's not into any of that. No.
Good.
He has to prove himself worthy of her. And the other big character arc is him learning how to be the man she needs.
Nice. I like both of these.
It's something that, I think people have a certain expectation when you have, costume drama kind of shows. They expect, there's tropes, and it's fun to take them and turn them on their head.
Yeah, it really is. Is there something, do you have a special affinity for opera that you decided to make her an opera singer?
I hate to say this, but no. I mean, I like opera. I'm a Beverly Sills fan. I love Beverly Sills. I read her memoirs when I was at a very impressionable age, like 10 or 12, and I absolutely adore Beverly Sills.
Okay.
And opera's good, but I'm not an opera fan. I'm not. So it's much more the time period, and actually in 19th century America, opera was a popular art form. It was. It was not siloed off into this classical music thing at the time. Ella's much more James Gandolfini than she is Renee Fleming.
Nice.
For lack of a better.
Yeah. So. Nice.
Yeah.
So do you have to do a lot of research? Like, how do you approach your research?
The Gilded Age life and style stuff is stuff I've already, a lot of times it's stuff I know, I just have to confirm because I've always been a buff for that time. A lot of times I find myself checking out, could Ella have a role in this opera, or would this be something that would be in her repertoire? Right. And sometimes that's stuff I figure out. And as it happens, my agent is a serious opera buff.
Oh,
a big time opera buff. So if I hit something accidentally that's a serious howler, or if I need somebody, you know, he knows. So
Yeah.
I'm very lucky.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So, well, your new one takes place on a cruise ship. And one of the things that I thought was interesting was the whole that you had to not just do the idea of being on a cruise, but it had to be a cruise in 1920, which is entirely different than the way it's done now. Tell me about that.
Sure is. I mean, it was the golden age of cruising.
Right. Yeah.
And it was one of the, I think at the time it was one of the only ways to get from Europe to America. So it was quite common. And it was a 7-day cruise. I did take that transatlantic cruise. I flew to England and I took the cruise from Southampton to New York. Did the thing.
Tax deduction.
Yep.
It's all for business.
Yeah.
It's all
Surely
for business.
is.
It's all for business. Tell the accountant it's all for business.
Well, I do. Because I wanted to see what it really would have been like. And for this one, I set it on the Olympic, which is the sister ship to the Titanic.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. Which, as a kid, I was kind of obsessed with the Titanic. And so I was like, oh, but this one stayed afloat, so I'm gonna put it on this one.
Yeah.
And it was really helpful because I was able to find a lot of information about the Olympic. Like I was able to find pictures and descriptions of what, like even the first and second class cabins and areas were all like, a lot of pictures. There's a lot of good research out there for me for this one. So
well, also probably just fun to do that kind of research.
Absolutely. I love falling down those rabbit holes. I'm kind of a nerd. I really enjoy it. So each of my books has a different setting. And I really enjoy learning all I can about the new city or the new place where I'm setting it.
Yeah. All of mine are in one place, Washington Square in New York. Yeah. And I walk Washington Square regularly because it's fairly close to my office. So once in a while, the radio station where I work. So probably a couple times a month, I'll just wander around the Washington Square neighborhood. And sometimes that gives me ideas. And that's actually where I originally got the idea for it. And it really is very much, that setting is very much a part of the book.
Yeah.
And just like you weave your settings in. Yeah.
It must be nice to just have it in the same place. So I really set myself up for a lot of work for each book.
It is, but the other thing though is that when you pick an identifiable place like that, every once in a while you'll run into stuff that has to be corrected. I had Gil staying at the what, and in this one, there are several important scenes at what is called the Waverly Place Hotel. Mm-hmm. That's a made-up hotel because the place that I had the characters staying was not in operation as a hotel in 1900. And the building is the right vintage and it looks right and everything looked right to me walking past it and looking around, but I didn't do property records. And a copy editor pointed out to me in actually the second book before I got to the third book that no, that was not a hotel in 1900. And so I'm glad it was the copy editor who pointed it out and not somebody else. Yeah. I'm always grateful for that because
it is embarrassing when something slips through and somebody else points it out. And you're like, oh yeah, one of us should have caught that.
Yeah. But that's one thing I really appreciate about working with good copy editors and editors that, you know, if I think I know something and I don't know it, somebody will tell me.
Yeah, it was really nice.
The other thing that I always love with the research, and I don't know if you feel the same way, is what I think of as clothing porn.
Yeah.
I want to know what everybody's wearing when they're wearing it, and I make sure we know.
Yeah, it is really fun. The 20s are good, and the Gilded Age, both really good, great time periods for clothing. Yeah. And so is the Gilded Age, and I think on cruise ships and your characters, don't they change clothes 3 or 4 times a day? I only have them changing about twice a day.
Oh, okay.
But yes, there's a lot of costume changing.
Yeah. So does Ella, and Ella wears men's clothes when she fences, and of course when she's on the air, on the air, that's me on the stage, and so she'll show up. Occasionally, she runs into somebody who doesn't know her, know who she is in men's clothes. If she happens. Actually, the funniest one is in the first book. The Duke meets Ella for the first time when she's rehearsing, and she's in fencing gear, and she's in her, breeches and a shirt. Yeah. And then they meet for tea 2 days later, and he doesn't recognize her.
Oh. That's super
and
fun.
he makes the observation, which I have heard from somebody who I knew from the gym, but not from real life. When he looks at her, he says, "I didn't recognize you in your clothes." Somebody's actually said that to me. It was one of those lines that sticks. I loved it.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. How do you like? So you walk around. Do you do other research? And how do you approach it?
Oh yeah. I mean, sometimes I don't know about you, but Wikipedia is my best friend for little things. Like if I don't remember where a particular thing was or what a charm bracelet would look like, I would go online and try to find particularly what charm bracelets looked like at the time. Or but if it's big stuff, I have to go out and check. Sometimes I find myself getting books and really, a lot of the stuff also for me is because I write in first, and I need to know how it feels to do a particular thing like opera, how it feels to how it feels to sing this, and like so I've read a lot of opera singers' memoirs, Beverly Sills, Marilyn Horne, a number of them, so that I know what it feels like to do what she does.
Yeah. I do the same thing. I actually, each one of my books I've approached, I pick up a lot of books, both about the time period and then about like the first one I found an out of print book about the hotel and its history. And this one I found an out of print book on eBay about, it was a memoir written by a Cunard ship captain.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And so a lot of it was real dry. But some of it, I mean, there's still great information in there about like what it was like to be a crew member on a ship in the 20s.
Yeah, I read this wonderful one about life below stairs in the Edwardian period, and I think it was actually called Life Below Stairs, and that was great because one thing that I'm really careful about with the Ella books is that we don't see all of the servants, but the ones we see are people with agency and lives, and they, and you want that. You want to know that, Rosa's not just there to hand you the dress. She's a person.
Yes.
And so it was good to read about. Make sure I had some of that insight.
Perfect. Yeah. It's amazing. So I know for the audience, there's usually a question of whether people are pantsers or plotters. And a plotter is somebody who outlines their book, which sounds really neat to me. And then pantsers are the people who just kind of write by the seat of their pants. Which one do you fall into?
Well, I call myself a semi-pantser, which sounds like something my 11-year-old son would read a book, Captain Semi-Pantser and the Underpants Brigade. But it just means that I get the opening and the closing and usually a couple of key scenes.
Okay.
And then I sit down and write a roadmap.
All right.
So what about you?
I'm a pantser 100%. Like I usually have an idea of what and then I just sit down and start writing it.
Do you ever find yourself getting ideas at inappropriate times in inappropriate places and find yourself feeling
yes, always.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's what's gonna happen next.
My worst one was actually for Overture. There's a big twist, and no spoilers here, but there's a big twist like 2/3 of the way through. And I actually got that when I was half asleep on the train on the way into the city. And I popped out of my seat going, that's it!
Fantastic.
Yeah, they thought I was nuts.
Yeah, it's fair.
Okay, so the big question. I'm sorry?
I take long walks, and sometimes
I do that too, yeah.
I'm out there like speaking dialogue to myself out loud, and I'm like, people think I'm crazy.
Oh yeah, no.
Talking to myself.
Oh, I do that too. But if it's any consolation, in newsrooms, there's always this sort of low, and at least in my radio newsroom, I've never worked in print newsrooms, so I don't know about that. But in radio newsrooms, there's always this sort of low hum, which if you don't know what it is, it's just this was weird, And what it is people trying out lines.
Oh, that makes sense.
So you'll find yourself saying, does this headline work? And you'll be saying it to yourself, or I'll bounce it off my partner. What is, so yeah, the trying things out is entirely normal and everybody does it.
Yeah.
Even serious news people do it. Okay, so we both are big into the golden age kind of thing, and you definitely are very much into that. So I'm gonna step on the third rail here.
Okay.
I have a lot of friends who are big mystery readers and firmly believe that you're either a Christie girl or a Sayers girl.
Oh,
And that, you can read both, but one of them feels more right to you than the other. So
Christy.
Sayers.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I
Interesting.
didn't find Sayers until I was an adult, until I was much
Okay.
older. I read my grandfather's Agatha Christie's as a kid.
Yeah.
My maiden name is Marple.
Oh,
And so I saw the books, the Miss Marple books, and thought, oh, there's a Miss Marple who's not me.
yeah.
But I found Sayers as an adult and I really loved it.
That really spoke to you. I don't know if I could read Christie now, but like I read so many of them in middle school as a child. Just read so many of them.
So did I.
Yeah.
I also have a theory about not all, but some of the people who tell you that they love Agatha Christie and they read so much Agatha Christie. Many of these people have actually watched all of the Agatha Christie movies and
It's
series and
definitely
things, and they haven't read it in years. They haven't.
Yeah. I actually have read one or two recently. Have picked them back up and read a couple recently.
Do you have a stress read? Because I do. When I'm
Stress read?
a stress read. Yeah.
I
I'm sorry,
do.
what?
I do.
Yeah.
What is yours?
What's yours?
What's yours?
Oh, mine is history. Alison Weir. I can't tell you how many times I have read The Lady in the Tower about Anne Boleyn. Whenever things in my life get freaky, I get Alison Weir books about the Tudor courts.
Interesting. Mine are Rex Stout.
Oh, my grandfather read him all the time. Yes.
Yeah, the Nero Wolfe series.
Yes.
When I was in grad school, I should have been writing term papers, and instead I tracked down every single Nero Wolfe book that he had written, and there are like 40 some of them.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
read
He was
them all.
great. Yeah.
And I still go back to them. I still go back to them when I'm stressed out.
So do I.
Pick one up.
My other stressed one is Spencer, Robert B. Parker.
Oh, Robert Parker. Yeah.
Oh, I love Spencer.
Yeah, that's a great series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He really was really appealing to me in the pandemic, and probably the same reason Nero Wolfe is, because goes out there and fixes everything and rights wrongs and
Yep. Yeah. Those are my comfort reads.
yeah, exactly. You have to have it. And it's nice to read other people's work and review and support other writers and everything, but you got to have a couple of books that you just go hide in.
Yeah. Those are my pulling the pages up over my head.
Yeah.
Another question. So what does your writing routine look like? I know you do it differently.
Now I finally have one again. Well, I have an 11-year-old, and we did virtual school last year.
Yeah.
So I was a virtual 5th grade teacher.
Yeah.
And so it was 5 minutes, anytime there was 5 minutes in a flat space from the laptop.
Yeah. Did you have a hard time writing during the pandemic? I mean, other than that.
I started writing short stories.
Oh,
I had never done a short story until I did one for a Sisters in Crime anthology last year. And they turned out to be this very satisfying thing. I mean, they're short stories are, as you know, they're an entirely different art form. And I always thought that I fought in novels.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I have, these little bits of time, and it's was very satisfying to be able to knit this thing together, and eventually figured out that I actually think it's Nero Wolfe who said that, not Nero Wolfe, sorry, Rex Stout, talking about his Nero Wolfe series, that the length of the amount of plot determines the length of the story.
Oh.
Something like that. It was this great insight, something along the lines of, whether it's going to be a short story or a novella or a full-length novel by the amount of plot you have in the idea.
Rex.
Yeah, such writer's craft, man. Oh wow.
Right?
Yeah. And the lack of time during the pandemic forced me to think about short stuff, and ta-da.
So interesting.
Do you have a writing routine, or?
I do. I struggled during the pandemic to write at all. Even though I had all the time in the world, I really struggled with.
That makes it harder though, because
Yeah.
when now I have time and I'm
Yeah.
sitting there, I'll sit there, you know, with the blank going, okay,
Right? Yeah. And I mean, I struggled to read during the pandemic too, which I love to read. So, and I'm just starting to get that back, my reading. Yeah, my routine is when I'm drafting a novel, like when I'm just doing in the research phase, it's different. When I'm drafting, I get up every morning, get my coffee, have my breakfast, and then I sit and write for a couple of hours. Usually these days I like to go to a coffee shop and just sit and work for a couple hours.
Because we've all been trapped inside for so long. It's good to get out.
Yes.
The energy is good.
Yeah. And then, you know, I pick some place where I got a good view and I can watch people watch between scenes or whatever. How about you?
Yeah, after drop off, if it's been a long weekend, I'll catch a nap and then I'll get to work.
Yeah.
I have a weird schedule. I work morning drive on weekends, and so I basically don't sleep for 2 days of the week.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
so it is a running joke in my house that don't ask me to do anything on a Monday morning.
No.
Ask for nothing on a Monday morning because you won't get it, and I won't remember that you asked.
Right?
Yeah.
What time do you have to get up to go do that?
We live about 3 hours. It's about a 3-hour commute into the city. And so I take the last train out on Friday night, get in for Saturday morning, work until 11:30, come home, 11:30 get home, get a nap, leave at 10:30 p.m. to go to another day, and then come home on Sunday afternoon. And sometimes I add another day on one side or the other. But yeah, I mean, there ain't a lot of sleeping on the weekend.
Wow. No.
No.
No, you're not doing anything on a Monday.
But I've been doing a version of this for all of my adult life, so I'm more acclimated to lack of sleep than most people would be.
That's fair.
So, yeah.
That's fair. I just
it's amazing, isn't it, that as things open up, you're starting to get the energy back.
Yeah.
You know, as the world starts to kind of come back, the energy's starting to come back with it.
Very much agree. Yeah. So have you always wanted to be a writer? What sparked this?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know a time when I didn't write. I mean, somebody asked me when the first time I wrote something was, and I said maybe middle school. I don't know. You know, and what about you? Same thing?
No, I mean, I always wanted to be a writer, but I didn't actually sit down and give it a whirl until I think I had one short story that I had written beforehand. But yeah, I always wanted to, and I was jotting down ideas like, oh, I could write a book about this and the character could be like this, but I never actually sat down and did it until Mina House.
Yeah.
So,
no, I actually wrote and tried to sell a historical novel at age 16.
Oh, wow.
Thankfully, nobody bought it because I wouldn't want my name on that thing now. The manuscript is somewhere in my house, and you know, when I die, please God, nobody does anything with it.
Right.
But yeah, I did. I mean, I was that geek kid who came home and sat at the typewriter writing weird things. And yeah, I tried.
No.
Yeah, and then I got into news, and I was a news writer for years and years. And then when the little went to kindergarten, I suddenly had time, and I thought, you know, maybe now's the time to try writing again.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By which time I had 30, well, not 30 years, God, please. I had a couple of decades in newsrooms of news writing because I started that as a teenager, and it was just the banging it out every day that made a huge difference in, you know, writing.
Right.
Because I don't know how you feel about it, but you learn to write by writing.
Yeah. Or by reading. I think
yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I really think the best teacher for writing is reading a lot in the genre you want to write.
Yes, absolutely. You're absolutely right. Yeah. And also it gives you a sense of what will or will not sell. And I know we're not supposed to think about, you know, that kind of thing, but sorry, it's part of the game.
It is part of the game.
Yeah.
So it's true.
Yeah, I always had I think I had about a 5-book a week habit before I started writing. So
yeah, I did too. When I was reviewing, I probably read 100 to 150 books a year, which is which has taken a big, has writing affected your reading?
Yes.
Mine too.
No question. I don't know about you, but I hate to read fiction that is in my genre when I am working on something.
I can do it and like to do it. I just, since the pandemic, I have just not been reading as much as I used to.
I'm terrified of accidentally absorbing somebody's idea.
That's really, yeah.
And it's like, I as I get more comfortable with myself as a writer, write more, I realize that even if I did get the idea for, one line of, one plot line,
Right.
It wouldn't come out looking like whoever I got it from.
Right.
But there was a while there where I just would not read fiction when I was writing.
That's fair. And I've heard that from a lot of people. Like, they don't want to absorb somebody else's voice. They don't want to. Yeah.
Well, the voice thing, I think, if you're writing multiple things, the voice thing is really important. I don't write contemporary when on a day that I write historical.
Yeah.
I'm terrified of one character coming out sounding like the other.
Right. I can do it if I'm revising one thing and then writing something.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
I can do. But I don't think I could write both simultaneously.
No, if I'm working on historical, that's what I start the day doing that. And then, if I'm doing contemporary, if I've done something with a contemporary piece, I'm not going to go back and work on a historical later in the day, because you just lose that focus on the sense.
So are the contemporary things you're working on, are those the short stories?
I actually also have I wrote a full-length my first contemporary mystery that came out last month.
Hey, congratulations.
Thank you. As Nikki Knight, live, local, and dead. So yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's at a radio station in Vermont. Wonder where I got that idea.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but the contemporary thing, it's different, and that one's much more personal because the main character is a mother and is a grown up and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that was one thing that when I was writing, and I wonder if you've noticed this. When I was writing Ella, I wasn't quite ready to go to some of the things that I was experiencing as an adult, as a mother, as a person. And Ella is a single person, is single. She's not married. She has kids that she knows kids that she cares for, but they're not her kids. And she has a lot of close friendships, but Ella doesn't go places that my other characters do. Have you noticed that as you get more comfortable as a writer, you find yourself willing to go to places and take up issues that you weren't willing to at first?
I think so, yeah, very much so. Yeah, and especially as I get to know the character better as well. Yeah.
That's one thing that I actually with Ella. Ella has what we would, as modern people, would recognize as a little bit of PTSD. From her deprived childhood, and she woke up with her mother's body in the tenements. This isn't a spoiler. This happened to her. This is in Ella's backstory, and she's got, as you would, some trauma issues from that. Right. But it only comes up very briefly in the first book, and a little bit in the second, and then the third one she is able to kind of tell us the whole story. And it wasn't just her getting to know the readers better, it was me getting to know Ella better and how she's going to handle it. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. And I find that and then the more I write her, the easier it is to just kind of drop into her.
Yeah. I've noticed that with Ella too. Yeah, I can. Yeah.
As a character. Yeah.
We're almost at, I think it's almost time to take questions.
I think it almost is.
Wow.
Oh, fast.
Yes.
Is someone going to come back?
Are we there? Yeah.
Hello.
Hi there.
All right, so just as a reminder, if you do have any questions, you can still send them using the audience Q&A at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We will just start with a few that we already have.
Cool.
So first, does writing energize or exhaust you?
I think it is exhausting. My brain can only do it for a couple hours a day, and then it just kind of shuts down. It's like, nope, I got to be done for today. Yeah.
I think it depends. If I had the idea, or if it's an idea that I've been wanting to work on and I finally have time to work on it, that's energizing. If it's I gotta bang out this chapter because I gotta get this done, that's different.
Yeah.
All right, next question. Do you try more to be original, or do you deliver to readers what they want?
I'm sorry to report, I think I'm delivering what I want. So even when I wrote the first book, I followed the advice to write what you want to read. And so that's what I wanted to read, like a protagonist like that in that setting, with that tone. And I've continued to do that. Like each setting is something that like I find exciting to research and write about. So it's a little self-serving, I guess. How about you, Kathleen?
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree very much with the write what you want to read. There weren't a lot of characters like Ella Shane around, and I would like to read somebody like Ella, and so that's kind of where that came from. But I, modified her a little bit here and there, and both in terms of what people would be interested in buying, but also in terms of what fit the time, that kind of, so there's, so both.
Yeah.
So kind of going off that a little bit, Kathleen, with your character comment that you had just made, do you base your characters off people that you know, or is it just kind of things coming up and you're like, I want this to be a character?
I don't do one-to-ones. For anybody who's looking for themselves in anything that I've written, and there are a few contemporary stories I've written that are set in radio stations, so no one-to-ones, but I do borrow relationship dynamics. Like Ella's has an older mentor, an older friend, Preston, who is like an uncle figure to her, and her relationship with Preston is very much like mine with one of my favorite on-air partners. It's like he's like her favorite uncle by adoption, and I have that kind of relationship with one of my on-air partners. Or Ella's relationships with her friends are very similar to mine with my female friends. So but Hetty isn't based on any woman I know. It's just they relate to each other the way that I do with my women friends.
And Erica, what about you?
I don't do many one-to-ones. I would say my Aunt Millie, who Jane travels with, she is based on my grandmother, who was a character, we'll say. She's not an exact ripoff, but there are a lot of similarities. But I really agree with what you said, Kathleen, that I think I do pull dynamics and relationships from things that both I see or that I experience myself. Also, like friends' quirks. I might steal a quirk and I give it to a character. But yeah, I haven't stolen anybody wholesale, really.
I borrow names too.
I just have run out of like being able to come up with new names already. And so yeah, I've started borrowing friends' names. Like, just so you know, you're going to be in this book. It's
usually a tribute. Ella's doctor, Dr. Edith Silver, is named for my husband's 90-plus-year-old aunt, who is also who's a psychologist, and she's somebody we know. So somebody we see frequently, and who somebody is in my life. Yeah. And so when the book comes out, I always say your character has a lot to do this time, or something.
Amazing. Yeah,
I love little Easter eggs like that. I think they're so fun. I love that. All right. How long does it take to research your books? How do you organize your research? Do you research before starting to write?
So the way I do it is when I know what my setting for the next book is going to be, I collect a lot of books. As a book nerd, it's my first inclination is to, I don't know something, I'm going to gather a lot of books about it. And so I read them, maybe not completely thoroughly, but I read them and I take notes. It'll often spark, depending on what I'm reading, it'll spark, secondary characters, or it'll give me backstory ideas. I'm like, oh, this is a really interesting, like, just thing. And I might ascribe it to somebody as their background. So I do that all ahead of time. And then I write a really rough first draft. which I set aside. And then I have found that I go and do the research trip, and then go back and add what I didn't know or needed to see, or that's how I go about it. How about you, Kathleen?
Usually what I do is I get ideas while I'm walking the site. I've worked near where Ella's home is, so I can walk that area either before or after work a lot of the time. And I'll wander around Washington Square and get ideas. And a lot of time also I will go online, or I'll get books. My interlibrary loan list is,
Yeah.
And get my stack of books and check out a particular issue or a topic, or something. In the first one, Ella was singing an aria from Xerxes, and I wanted, which was the signature piece of Marilyn Horne. And at that time, it had been hundreds of years ago. It hadn't been sung from the time it was written until Marilyn Horne rediscovered it. So I wanted to just check Marilyn Horne's autobiography to make sure that how I was describing Ella singing Xerxes is how it would feel to do it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
All right. Do you think someone could be a writer if they don't feel emotions strongly?
I mean, I think anybody can be a writer.
Yeah. And I think we process emotions through writing a lot of the time.
Yeah, I do think that is very true. I think you can process a lot through writing.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be writing down your feelings about whatever. So a lot of times what you're feeling comes out in something else entirely.
Correct.
Right. Do you have anyone or anything specifically that you think has helped you become a better writer?
Reading. Doing so much reading.
I'll second reading, and I'll also say a lifetime in newsrooms, because being in newsrooms or any other environment that requires you to write with people, whether it like an academic environment or magazines, whatever, anything that requires you to write for other people who are going to read it. So that has taught me so much, because I know how to accept criticism in ways that people who just do their writing at home and then it's the first or second time someone else has seen it don't. I know it's not personal. I know we're working to make it better. And that insight from my professional news career turned out to be just incredibly valuable in my writing career, because it doesn't, you can tell me to change something and I don't take it as, I take it as, okay, you gotta make a change. And that insight has been so helpful. So find people, find an environment where your work is critiqued on a regular basis.
Yeah, I was gonna say joining a writing group might provide that, where you can learn how to take criticism and learn how to take suggestions that maybe, and like think about whether or not you agree with it for your own own work.
Yeah.
But it'll help you build a thicker skin for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Joining a writing group.
Any kind of collaborative and honest environment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very nice. Okay. How, if so, did publishing your first book change your process of writing?
I'll be honest, it didn't change my process of writing, because I was fortunate enough that I had been in the mystery community for many years before I wrote my first book, because I was a reviewer. So I knew what the constraints were for writing mysteries. I knew that if you get a series that you have to write one a year. So when I sat down to write my first book, I did it all within a year time frame, knowing that like moving forward, this is what you have a year. So this is how you have to learn how to do it. So I didn't really change my process. How about you, Kathleen?
Not really. I mean, I think for me, the big change was just the presence associated with the writing was much more of a thing than the writing itself. The having to maintain that whole social media presence and develop all of the things that go around the writing were a much bigger deal than the writing itself.
Okay. Do you read your book reviews?
No.
Sometimes. I learned my lesson the hard way with the contemporary one, because it touched a little bit on politics. There's some stuff in there. It's not a political book, but people took it that way, and some really horrible things were said. So I am taking this whole thing a lot differently than I did a year ago.
Yeah. I read the ones that my publicist will send to me, but I don't read online reviews. I understand that reading is subjective, like what is for me and it might not be for somebody else. So
yeah, and this all reminded me of one of my grandfather's favorite lines, which was, opinions are like noses. Everybody's got one.
Exactly.
But he didn't say noses.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fair.
All right. Let's see what other questions we have here. Okay. How many unpublished or half-finished books do you have, if any?
So Mina House was my first book that I wrote, but now I do have, I think, three other books in the drawer, as they say, that are unpublished and that I may at some point try to get published in the future. How about you, Kathleen?
I have a sequel to Ella and a sequel to the Contemporary ready to go.
Okay.
Plus a couple of other series proposals
Nice.
also ready to go, and just a bunch of stuff on my computer that I'm noodling with, and one absolutely batso bonkers thing that I wrote after my first failed project that probably will never see the light of day, but it was a heck of a lot of fun to write.
That's what counts. That's what matters.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have a specific view of literary success or no? And what does that look like to you?
Oh, that's interesting. Kathleen, what do you?
As long as I get to keep playing, I'm happy. You know, have a book coming out when I can, or you know, and you know, short stories and that kind of thing. Just as long as I've got something in the pipeline, I would be happy. That would be fine by me. Be nice to get an award here and there. I certainly wouldn't turn it down, but as long as I get to keep playing.
I think, yeah, I just want to be able to keep writing. So I think for me, success looks like just continued contracts. If it's Jane or something else, I think that's, for me, that is success.
Okay, thank you. And that's all that we have for audience Q&A. So now I'm going to ask one of RJ Julia's favorite questions. And I meant to give you guys a warning beforehand so you can think it over.
Oh,
What are you reading right now?
oh, I knew this was coming.
That's why I like to give warnings, but I forgot.
Actually, I can go first on this one.
Yeah,
I'm reading Edwin Hill's The Secrets We Share. It just came out from Kensington last week, The Secrets We Share. And I have broken my one sacred rule by continuing to read this book because it is so good. I don't do kids in danger. Under no circumstances do I do kids in danger. There's a kid in danger about 3/4 of the way through this book, and I'm still reading it. So it must be good. And it is.
Edwin Hill is great. So I just finished Murder at the Mansions, which is Sarah Rosette. It's a series set in the 1920s also. They're really fun.
Wow.
And I also just finished not very long ago, and I actually don't know if it's out yet. I think it is. The Book of Cold Cases by Simone St. James. She's one of my like auto buys. Simone St. James.
Very nice. Well, thank you for those. And that's all the questions we have. So I want to thank you both so much for joining us tonight. That has been such a lovely discussion. And thank you everyone for tuning in tonight. As always, don't forget to purchase a copy of Danger on the Atlantic. We do have signed book plates as well as signed copies of Fatal Overture. So make sure you get a copy of both books. You can click the links in the chat or you can come visit us in store. Thank you both so much for being here tonight.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. It's been wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a great rest of your night.